Welcome to CivilNet. Today we're joined by Paolo Spantigati, the Country Director of the Asian Development Bank Resident Mission in Armenia. A very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
So due to the COVID-19 pandemic, growth forecasts throughout the world have been slashed. In early April, the Asian Development Bank predicted a 2% plus positive growth rate in Armenia, but the situation has changed since then. The Armenian government now is predicting a 2% contraction. With regards to the Asian Development Bank, what is the current outlook for Armenia's economic growth?
So indeed, as you mentioned, a couple of months ago, we were a little bit more on the optimistic side. We were forecasting a 2.2% growth, but we're currently revising our estimates and will soon issue the updated ones, and we are now around minus 3.5%. Let me just say this is not only Armenia. As ADB, we have done some forecasting all around the world, and especially on Asia and Pacific. And the forecast, actually Armenia, if it's a minus 3.5, won't be that bad. We're forecasting more than minus 6%. If the lockdown and the difficult measures will last 3 months, up to a more than minus 9% if the lockdown will last more than 6 months. So at the moment, our estimates, it's around minus 3.5%.
So clearly, the COVID-19 pandemic has had an enormous impact on the Armenian economy. What has that impact been, in your opinion? And furthermore, has the Asian Development Bank, what have they been doing to assist Armenia's economy, in particular with regards to its response to the coronavirus pandemic?
So we have assessed the situation, and we think obviously the impact will be manifold. Obviously, it will impact on the household income, it will reduce exports, tourism will be badly affected, remittances also, especially from Russia. So this will definitely have a dampening effect on the economy. As ADB, we stand ready to support the government. So far, we have articulated our support in, let's say, 3 areas. First, to address the health crisis. And we have provided around $500,000 of grant support to purchase protective equipment and other items supporting Ministry of Health. Then we're looking at the economic impact, and we are hopeful. So we're undertaking an economic assessment together with our development partners, and we're hopeful to leverage around another $2 to $3 million grants, which will be mostly directed towards health and education to help cope with the crisis. And then our third pillar of response is supporting the private sector. So ADB has launched a facility to support businesses which are undergoing some difficulty. Just a few days ago, we signed the first such operation. So some commercial lending in favorable terms with ENA, the electric network of Armenia. So we are ready also to support the private sector.
COVID-19 is a global challenge, and different countries have been coping with it differently. In terms of emergency economic policies, what is your assessment of Armenia's government's anti-crisis economic plans, and how would you compare it to similar countries?
Indeed, all around the world, the COVID has been badly felt in terms of economic impact beyond the health one. So we see, and especially in Asia where we work, so many different responses, so many different strategies. We are pleased to see the government is really trying to address both the supply side and the demand side, and they have launched a very important series of a package of initiatives around $300 million or 0.2% of GDP, and we think this is a very good response. We stand ready to support the government if the government needs any assistance. Let me just add that when I mentioned the estimates we've done all around Asia and Pacific, which were pretty dire, between 6 and 9% negative growth of GDP, our assessment is that government rapid and effective response could actually reduce up to 30–40% the overall impact. So we are confident that the government has undertaken good responses, as I said, supporting household income, supporting businesses in difficulty, And so we expect that that should definitely reduce the economic impact.
So the North-South Highway is a long-standing infrastructure project that aims to connect Armenia's north and south, and the Asian Development Bank has been funding this project. At the moment, work has been halted. When will work resume, in your opinion?
Indeed, Asian Development Bank is one of the financiers of the North-South corridor together with other development partners, and the government is implementing. There's been two let's say challenges or difficulties. One was that one of the contractors got into financial difficulties, so the government had to terminate the contract. The rebidding is on its way, and we hope that will be concluded fast and soon, and we're working with the government on that. And of course the COVID crisis, so which has hampered the remobilizing of the works. But we are in constant dialogue with the government. We just undertook some review of the portfolio, and we expect works to resume very, very soon.
So the North-South Highway was meant to be a massive economic boost to Armenia, but some see it now more as an economic burden. After the revolution, several criminal schemes were uncovered during the implementation of this project. Do you think that Armenia has failed in terms of this project? And does the Asian Development Bank have any responsibility for these failures? And is there not a responsibility to reveal any corrupt schemes that the Asian Development Bank may have had some knowledge of?
Sure. Let me start by saying I do not agree that the project is not worthwhile for Armenia. I think it will bring massive benefits to the country once it's completed. So yes, there have been some challenges, but let me also say that the experience of the Asian Development Bank is any such very big project always have challenges. There's no easy one. Let me also say that, for example, one of the positive aspects of the project is that so far there haven't been major cost overruns. The project design estimates, cost estimates are actually what is happening. So I think actually that doesn't happen so often, and it's another positive thing. You mentioned some criminal allegations. This is up, again, we are financing the government. The contracts are with the government. It's up to the government to pursue. As ADB, we make it a point that even if we're only financing and not implementing, we require maximum due diligence and good governance. And if there is any rumor or allegation, we have our own Office of Audit and Integrity, and they do also look into things, and they definitely then correspond with the government. But let me conclude by saying that I think Armenians should be very proud and happy, because once the project is completed, I'm sure it will bring enormous benefits, both in terms of economic opportunities, easier access to services, greater connectivity. And I've seen it even in my own country. Once after they laid out major transport links, this has really helped the country take off.
So besides the North-South Highway, can you expand upon other projects that the Asian Development Bank is involved in Armenia? And can you maybe reveal some of the future plans that the Asian Development Bank has been thinking about in Armenia?
Sure. Let me say Asian Development Bank started working with Armenia in 2005, and since then we have approved around $1.5 billion of lending operation, and I think around $30 million of grants, technical assistance. At the moment, we have a portfolio, ongoing portfolio of around $650 million. And our operations at the moment are roads. Yourself, you mentioned North-South M6. We have a project supporting Yerevan municipality to develop urban mobility. We have a project supporting schools to become more resilient to possible disasters and more also friendly to people with disabilities, difficult accesses. And we have also a number of other interventions helping the financial sector, the Minister of Finance. So we cover quite a variety. We have also a project ongoing in the energy sector with HVN. For the future, I think we'll continue. I mean, our priorities are really determined by the government priorities. The government actually is a shareholder of ADB. So we go by the indications of the government. We expect to continue in these such sectors. We expect probably to also be more involved in health and education. As I said, social services are key to support cohesion, reduce inequality, and address lack of opportunities. And also another area which probably we want to even become more involved, it's urban development, not only in Yerevan, but also in secondary cities. How to provide key infrastructure that makes life, say, better for those who live in secondary cities, and that also brings more economic opportunities. This could be a way for the government to reduce a little bit this, which happens all around the world, but this quite a substantial urbanization coming to Yerevan. So rather than just continuing bringing people to Yerevan, also bringing opportunities and infrastructure to secondary cities.
And can you also expand a bit upon the cooperation the Asian Development Bank has been doing with the private sector, also the recent announcement about the cooperation with the electrical networks in Armenia?
Sure. Let me say that actually Armenia, among all what we define as Central and West Asia, is the country with the highest success of ADB transactions with the private sector. It's the #1 in terms of volume and number of transactions. We have, in the last 4 or 5 years, also at the request of the government, done great efforts to reach out to the private sector. And as you mentioned, and as I mentioned earlier, we have a couple of transactions with ENA. We have been supporting quite a number of financial intermediaries. We have supported one intervention in the agribusiness, and we look at opportunities. In a country like Armenia, which is so rapidly developing, we think that where we can bring added value is precisely that, supporting private sector, startups. We're working with the Ministry of High Technology to really help bring in this transformation and innovation.
Mr. Spantigati, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.